And we are live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Nick from the P2W Fantasy Podcast here with Kevin on another weekly show as we step into week 4 of the NFL. It feels like it's almost going a little bit too quick. We anticipate all these games every Sunday, they hit, and then it's on to the next week. Kevin, before we talk about anything, I don't want to talk about numbers. I don't want to talk about, this guy did this, but I will say I took my L in the one league we're in against you. It was posted on Twitter. I don't know who posted the score line and said anything about it, but it was posted. So outside of that, how the rest of your fantasy weeks go or your
Hey, I
week
had to
go?
give you some crap. All right, I had to I started Zach Wilson and I won. That's all I got. And Mac Jones. Those are my two starting quarterbacks in that league. I really got to figure my life out in there because I don't know. But no, it was pretty good. Hey, Cowboys looked great on Monday, and we ran up the Eagles, and so that was a lot of fun. And we took care of that. But first, I need to ask you. How do you feel about the Bears, Nick? Like, what is going on with your boy Nagy? And like, listen, I'm a Fields guy. I think Fields is going to be great, but they did him no favors on Sunday. They didn't do his strengths. I wrote about it in Fantasy Pros. I said he's a buy right now because they didn't elevate any of his strengths, and it looked like crap. Like, what is your opinion? What the hell is going on with Nagy?
I will say that I went into the game thinking that, and I made the comparison because Tyrod Taylor looked great against the Cleveland Browns, right? But in that game, it was so cringeworthy, so hard to watch because I felt like Fields got hit on every other play. I mean, he's now number 2 in the league for sacks, and he started one game this season. So that just kind of
Yeah.
tells you how his day went. Um, I was with a bunch of other Bears fans, obviously being in the Chicagoland area. Very frustrating game as far as like not letting him throw the ball at first and then trying to get like cute with what he was doing with the ball in his hands and like the actual plays that were called. And there's a big mixture of things that were wrong. So everybody points to Matt Nagy, and I thought the play calling was shit. Like I'll just say that and be honest about it. I thought it was shitty. But at the same time, our offensive line looked as if they just opened the door every time because there was minimal blocking at all. Guys had a field day on Fields, no pun intended, but literally just got to the quarterback nonstop. And then I
Yeah.
will also say on a last note, when he did have some time, he was kind of forcing the first read every now and then and didn't look phenomenal. But when you're getting hit nonstop and the time in the pocket is so bad, I mean, what do you expect from a guy who just thrown into the fire with all those circumstances? But yeah, not a good day at the office for him. I think I called a hot take that he was going to take down the Browns, and he himself just got taken down over and over and over again. Do you think he gets to start this week and turns things around, or did it look that bad that you don't have the confidence there?
No, I think he should get the star. I think he's gonna turn things around. I like Fields. I think he can. I worry about Nagy. To me personally, like I worry about that whole situation. And I just don't like what he does. I think I actually wrote down. I think he's the worst coach in the NFL after Urban Meyer. Like I think he's unimaginative. There's a great Ringer piece about Fields, and I would go check it out at the Ringer, and it talked about just how unimaginative the play calling was, what he was trying to do out there. If you look at his throwing chart, everything was 5 to 10 yard curls. Like there was just nothing that opened up. They didn't get him on the run, and I understand that. So I just don't understand it. So for me, I just felt bad for you watching that game because it's tough being a Bears fan. Like I know that. And Cowboys fan,
Yeah.
it's tough being a Cowboys fan. We haven't really been good either, but we at least have a quarterback, and like I have Dak now, and Dak looks legit. Dak looks like he's grown up as a quarterback,
Oh
and he's
yeah.
making pre-call reads and everything like that. So I just felt bad watching Fields, and I hope that you get a head coach like Joe Brady or someone that comes in there that is an offensive-minded guy that actually knows how to run an offense and it'll help you. But that ownership, I don't know, man.
Oh man, get rid of Pace's ass too at the same time. I mean, it's
Yes,
just
and pace. Get rid
frustrating.
of pace.
Yeah, so frustrating, so frustrating. Could he play better? Sure, but literally, like, come on, man, getting hit nonstop. He's second in the league in sacks. I'm just gonna go over the same stuff over and over again. But we'll move on. We'll move on. So what we got going on today as we approach week 4 is that we'll do a quick recap of some of our calls from the previous week, from the starts that we suggested. Then we'll go into some droppable guys that haven't performed well enough to keep them on your rosters and our opinions. From there, go into a sleeper, some other topics, and of course, finish with some starts of the week 4. As always, this podcast is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group. Go check out fantasypoints.com. I'm on there every single day, preparing for podcasts, preparing for my leagues, looking up different data, looking at articles from some of the best in the business. So go check it all out at fantasypoints.com/subscribe. You can use my discount code 21win10. And if you are listening or viewing this live on Twitter, their new integration does not allow us to see the comments. So we do appreciate you guys tuning in. I can see on my phone how many people are watching. It doesn't actually add up to what's on my screen here, and the comments are not showing, but really do appreciate it. And stick with us here as we get into the show.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best, don't trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win.
All right, so as always, let's recap some of our suggestions from last week. I'll just read them all off, and then Kevin, anything that stands out to you, you let me know. So I said Daniel Jones. You said Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones, on my part, not really a good call there. QB 20 for the week. Sam Darnold, though, continues to be red hot. He was the QB 5. Awesome game again from him. I said Austin Eckler. He was the RB 8. You said James Robinson. He was the RB 4. So really good game out of James Robinson. Eckler, we kind of expect that, but both guys performed as top 10 running backs. I said Robert Woods, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. He was terrible. Wide receiver 65. CeeDee Lamb was your suggestion. He was the wide receiver 50 on the week. So our wide receiver calls, which is the hardest call to make because it's so deep, not the best there. Austin Hooper was my tight end against the Bears. Tight end 15 for the week. He did score a touchdown, but nothing too good to stand out there. And then Evan Ingram was yours at tight end 37. Not the best week out of him. So
No.
pros, cons, throw anything out there about some of these performances from our calls. And again, what we do each week is we call out our starts of the week. And it's just guys that we think are going to outproduce what people expect them to. So sometimes it's obvious, like I said, Austin Eckler, but maybe he was projected to be like RB 10 or 12 or something like that. Same with like James Robinson, you called. He was RB 4. He probably wasn't expected to be the RB 4 of the week. So, and any thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick James Robinson. I've been a noted hater of him, but I did think that he had a great matchup against Arizona, and that's what I kind of went with. And he got an end zone, obviously. And I think the targets is what I like the most from Robinson right now. He's got 6 targets. I know Visca truthers out there are hating those targets because that's going to definitely hurt Visca. But, 6 targets, 6 receptions, very efficient, 88 yards. And I thought that was a good, and it looks like he's outworking Hyde now. So I think James Robinson is going to kind of go back to that running back 2. But if he can find the end zone, they can do it that way. I think that was, for me, a good call. As far as CD goes, man, he was open a lot. And he just, he was wide open on that touchdown on 4th down. And Dak, I don't know what the hell Dak was looking at. Dak did not see him at all. So I do think that, CD would have had a better game. But overall, I mean, Darnold, baby. I mean, to me, Darnold is still a legitimate. Now, I'm in a weird spot this week, though, because Darnold plays the Cowboys. So now I have to hope Darnold plays okay, but we win, which I think is going to happen. But we have a defense that I think is rated 13th right now. Diggs is playing great. I think Darnold, you might want to sit Darnold this week. Me and my other co-host Jacob have a bet right now because he says Darnold is the streaming option to run with. And I said, I don't know, man. Our defense is a lot better than people give him credit to. So I think this week I'd sit Darnold. But I think Darnold's playing well.
I think so. I think so, too, because, I mean, the expectations off of what he's done in his career, not very high, but for a guy that's scoring in the 20s on a consistent basis here, he's doing a great job. And he's clicking well with the likes of DJ Moore, which I absolutely love. And even with CMC out of the picture, it'll be interesting to see against the Cowboys because they have been solid. I haven't been paying attention just as much, but I do recall 2 times the name Parsons thrown out there. Has he been really stepping up his game or was that just a few times I'm paying attention to the game?
No, Parsons. Hey, man, I'm sorry, Parsons. I was very upset when we drafted you because I wanted a cornerback and I wanted an offensive tackle. But they moved Parsons to DN because Lawrence is hurt. He has a broken foot, and he's been a very good. He's just like he's a joker guy. Just going back there, he's gonna find that linebacking spot. He's gonna find that DN spot. I still hate Jalen Smith and I still hate Van Der Esch. They suck. And they cannot guard anybody. So, like, let's be real here. Like, that's why running backs to me are going to be a big game. That's why Chuba Hubbard's not a bad pick this week because I'm glad CMC's not playing because if he was, we'd be in trouble because they cannot guard their running backs. So I do think there's going to be that. I just think that Darnold, if he's put in a position where he's going to have to really, really push down the field, I think that Diggs and those guys with that pressure that you're going to see, I think he can make some mistakes.
Yeah, and looking at Darnold as well, I mean, 2 out of the 3 matchups weren't really too tough as far as what the defense offered. The Saints was the interesting one just because they almost, I said the joke before and only I laughed at it, but they almost sent Aaron Rodgers back to Jeopardy. The funny thing is, before I get too much into that, I said that at a wedding this weekend. So my wife's father got married, so they had a reception, everybody had some drinks, and her father comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, go talk to this guy about Aaron Rodgers." And I thought he was a Bears fan. I'm in the Chicagoland area, and I made that joke. He didn't think it was funny at all, and he's like, I don't know what you're trying to get at this, but back to the point. The Saints were really good against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. That very next week, Sam Darnold was successful against them, but he's got to keep the streak going on as he plays another good defense. Sam Darnold, 19.06, 18.9, and then his best outing last week for fantasy, 25.26. Very good there. So let's look at the topic of dropping people because I've seen it all over Twitter, Kevin. Everybody right after this week 3 set of games, they go out there and you see so many people that say this person is droppable now. And sometimes it might be accurate. Sometimes it might be kind of borderline. Other times people are just like mad at their own personal matchups and they blurt out, big names that should never be dropped. But I think it's important to look at some guys that maybe be sitting on your bench and it might be time to move on because the waivers, obviously, maybe they're not the best this week, but they still are. There's still guys that are available to improve your team, and you kind of have to shift and pivot in redraft season. So my big question to start things off is, who's somebody? We'll go 2 guys each here, just to throw out a couple names. Who's somebody that you think at this point of the year you feel is droppable and doesn't need to be rostered right now, just based off her performances so far in this fantasy season?
Yeah, for my first is Cole Kmet. I think that he got talked to. I don't know where Cole Kmet got talked up at. I heard him everywhere on Twitter. Like, I know, Chicago guy, I get it. But with the way that offense looks and just I don't know what people are doing with tight ends at this point. Like that can't be a tight end that you have rostered at all. He had 7 targets his first game, and then he had 1 and 4 targets. He only had 1 catch, though, 11 yards. Hasn't looked great. Like, to me, you got to drop him. Like, you have to. Like, I don't see any explanation for why you keep him on your roster in redraft at this point, even if you have a deep bench. Because, look, if you look at the tight end landscape, even then, I just don't see it. I don't see it at all with him. And so that's one. And then my other one is Laviska Shenault. To be honest with you, like, yeah, one of my buddies, Christian, made a joke a couple weeks ago, like a week ago, not even a joke. He said, you might want to be able to drop Laviska. He got a lot of crap for it from all the analytics guys because the analytic guys are kind of bullies. And they said, no, you can't look at all this stuff. And you look at the targets, but we've consistently seen his targets drop. He went from 10 to 7 to 4. And yeah, he was efficient, 4 for 4, 4 receptions, 4 targets last game, hitting 48 yards. But if he's not getting any touchdowns and if they're not getting any rushing upside, they're not really using him. Like, in terms of like what you see from him out there, like if they're going to use James Robinson more, they're going to use Hyde more, Marvin Jones, DJ Chark's not even have that great of a year, but it doesn't look like Laviska's kind of going there. I made the joke that Laviska Shenault is Denard Robinson just with muscles, and I got kind of skewered on the last pod for that. Like, I'm not a Laviska guy. I haven't been. I think his price outweighs who he is. So I think he could be droppable depending on how deep your leagues are.
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, depends on the depth of your league, but I'm in some leagues for redraft that have 8 bench spots, and then there's some that have like 4 or 5. So it could be the case that you have to move on. I'm in one home league right now where I have Laviska, and it's not really helping me out. And I'm 0-3 in that. I came in second last year, and now I'm like super pissed off because I look like I was a one-time, championship runner. But Laviska, 20 targets in 3 games, only for 95 total yards. So the yardage is not there. He's not scoring. So you're really banking on, like you're kind of getting at, him to score and to maybe have some sort of big increase in yards, but he's not really been utilized in that way. Cole Kmet, as a Bears fan, as a Notre Dame fan, as a Cole Kmet fan, I agree. And it's because if you look the last 2 weeks, nothing tells you that he should be rostered. The first week I was excited because he came out and he had 7 targets, and I'm a huge target guy. Like, give me if it doesn't amount to a good game, but a guy sees 7-8 targets at the tight end position, I'm interested because it's going to happen. But week 1, 7 targets, and then the next 2 weeks, nothing. And the offense does not look good at all. And I want to piggyback off of that because my guy that I selected, one of my guys is Adam Troutman, who he's been on the field a lot, but it looks like he's a blocker because he ran a total of 10 routes with 1 target last game, 10 routes, and he was on the field for most of the game. So he's not doing anything as far as, being a pass catching tight end. And a lot of people really, really liked Adam Troutman going into the year. And, I get it because there was not a lot of guys that were, verified pass catchers within this team, but the Saints offense isn't really throwing the ball a ton, for one. And then for 2, if that's the amount of routes he's going to run in a game, that's super concerning. So I think at the tight end position, you have to make decisions. And if guys aren't really panning out, you need to move on and find guys that are, because I look at this list here. I got a handful of guys. And I wrote Everett as one, but now he's got COVID, I just saw, so we'll take him out. But your Cowboys, Dalton Schultz, I take before Troutman and Kmet right now. The target, he's having good fantasy weeks as far as getting involved. Conklin from the Vikings. Dawson Knox is getting more involved. Pat, I never can say the name, Freiermuth. All these guys are more productive in fantasy than Troutman and Kmet, who had the higher draft pick and higher names. So I think it's time to move on if you got these guys. I agree with Kevin. Troutman's my guy there too. Paris
Dalton Schultz tied in 5, baby. Like, he's tied in 5 right now. He's at 40 points. He's ahead of George Kittle. So in PPR. So if you look at that, I mean, and the other guy's Jared Cook too. I'd probably look at what Jared Cook and the targets that he's gotten in that offense. Like, I would probably take him over Troutman and Kmet.
And if you look at a guy like Schultz, 26 points last game. The first week he had 10.5, which, it's not burning you. Some of these other guys, they're burning you because they're only getting targeted once and they're not catching balls. The point with those guys I listed as well, all of them were rostering under 14% of ESPN leagues this morning. So they're probably free, just chilling on the waiver wire. And if you are juggling a tight end that's struggling, if you don't have one of the certified top guys, then find guys that are actually getting the volume and doing well for fantasy. There's no point in stashing and holding right now, in my opinion, for redraft. Other guy, Paris Campbell, I'm not interested. I wasn't really interested before, in all honesty. And I understood the reasonings to why people were. But he was a name that was tossed around a lot. But he trailed Pascal and Pittman in snaps last game. Pascal had 7 targets. Pittman had 12, which is a lot last game. T.Y. Hilton's coming back. I don't know what that means, really. This guy's had an abdomen injury recently. He came off of an Achilles injury. I think it's time to move on. I think he was projected like 6 points on fantasy for this upcoming week. So any interest in Campbell at all? Is he a stash, or is it not even worth it?
I love Paris Campbell, but no. I mean, if Pascal, those guys are getting out snapping you and they're outplaying you, like, I don't see any relevant information to be like, yeah, Pitt Campbell's keeping there. You guys get rid of him. He's a roster clogger. And, maybe next year, 4th-year player, right? Maybe we'll get back on this train next year. But yeah, Paris Campbell, I'm out.
And it's tough for redraft because there's guys you really go into the season liking, and a lot of redraft benches are not very deep.
No.
So like the guy behind me, one of the guys behind me, not the RB that's like a wide receiver and Najee Harris based off last game, but the other guy, Elijah Moore, on the wall behind me, really, really like Elijah Moore. Like I've been pounding the table for Elijah Moore. I'm in 2 redraft leagues where he is looking like a roster clogger right now. I kind of want to hold, but I think you have to kind of determine, like, if I'm not winning these matchups and there's guys that are scoring well in the waiver wire, you have to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a league that we have 4 bench guys. That's it. Like ESPN, 4 bench guys. And it's just an old school league that I don't like, but it's all my buddies. They don't like to switch it up. Like, you have to get rid of dudes. Like, I think I picked Ayuk up this week on waivers because he was on the waivers. So, like, that's the kind of leagues that a lot of people are playing in. They're not playing in leagues like us, like where we have 40 guys and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a little different out here.
There's leagues that some people are in. They got like high school kids and middle school kids. That's like the super deep Devy leagues. But yeah, on a similar negative note, and then maybe we can go forward into some positives here. But on a similar negative note, another big question for you, Kevin. Disappointments. Obviously, you're going to run into them in fantasy. You know, people are not going to perform at the highest of levels on a weekly basis from weeks 1 through 17 in general. But for you personally, so who's somebody that maybe you considered like a my guy, or you had a lot of faith in going into the year, that you're a bit concerned about and has just been disappointing so far for fantasy? Who comes to mind with that question?
Yeah, to me, it's Kenny Golladay. And the reason why is I always thought, like, where he was getting drafted, he was a value. So I think he was getting drafted. I basically as a wide receiver 3. And I always said, like, hey, if he's getting drafted as a wide receiver 3, that's good value, because there's no way Kenny Golladay is not going to be the wide receiver 1 of that team. I never called him an alpha. So a lot of people were like, oh, he's an alpha. No, I just thought he was going to be the best wide receiver in that team. I think I underestimated how bad Danny Dimes is. And I did see someone on Twitter say, can we stop calling him Danny Dimes because he doesn't throw dimes? And I think that's fair. I think we need to we need to sit that one out. Like, I think when you look at his accuracy, what he does, what Golladay does do is he can burn, but he can't create separation. What Stafford used to be able to do is hit him anywhere. It didn't matter. What Danny not Dimes does is he doesn't want to throw it because he can't hit that accuracy. He can't make those passes. And so that's why you get checked down Danny. He goes to Sterling Shepard, all these guys. Like, so I think for me, Golladay, I underestimated how bad Daniel Jones was. I underestimated. I should have not done this. This is how dumb I am. Jason Garrett's offense is so terrible, and it was always going to be bad. I should have known better. I just don't know, like, if that offense fits well. He's already yelling at Garrett. He already rumblings that they said they were going to pass the ball more vertically down the field, but they aren't doing it. So, like, there's a lot of negatives to go around, and I'm just really disappointed. Now, he hasn't had, like, it obviously has not been amazing, but he still has 4 catches in 2 games. He has had 60 yards, 64 yards in 2 games. Like, if he can score, we'd be talking a whole different thing. But I just worry about that giant offense.
In the likes of Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are up for grabs right now for health. So that might give him a slight boost, but at the same time, the guy has scored exactly 10.4 fantasy points twice now. And then the third time it was 6.8. So he's not having good weeks where you are comfortable sliding him in. So we'll see what happens with, the potential of both those other wide receivers. I mean, I'm not a big Slayton guy to begin with, but he's had some okay games outside of like that one huge drop pass that he had for a touchdown, unless he was overthrown, however you want to look at it. But Sterling Shepard's been awesome. So with both those guys potentially being out, we'll see what Kenny Golladay looks like, but he's not doing anything for you in a positive way to help you win your matchups though so far this season. So TBD. I was excited though. I was excited about him too. Especially when he was juggling where he was going to go and stuff. He's a Chicago guy, went to the same high school as my dad, but obviously different years. So always had a soft spot for Kenny Golladay, but hoping that it swings up right now. The same goes for my guy, Bobby Trees, man. Robert Woods. Man.
Tough right now.
I was so excited about him with Stafford because all signs pointed in the right direction. He was so involved. And I'm thinking to myself, like, the quarterback's better. Even though, that's my guy, Jared Goff. But the quarterback's better. Obviously, Matt Stafford's better. But I thought, like, hey, improved quarterback, that's a plus. Sean McVay loves Robert Woods. I thought, and I thought that he'd be a bigger piece of this offense because they extended him and they use it in creative ways. And he historically has gotten some nice targeted games. But it's not looking that way at all. He looks like a de facto Robin to Cooper Kupp being Batman. Like, that's just
Yeah.
the comparison that comes to mind right away. He scored in the 12s twice for fantasy. And then when I call him as my start of the week, because I said they're going to get this guy going, last week he scored 6.8 fantasy points. His targets 4, 9, and 6 across the 3 weeks for a total of 19. If you look at Cooper Kupp, he's 10, 11, and 12. So it's consistently going up. He has doubled the targets in 2 out of 3 weeks of Robert Woods. Not a great sign. Not a great sign. That's looking like an alpha and a beta instead of 2 good wide receivers like we thought they would be. 2 out of the 3 games Robert Woods had were under 40 receiving yards too. So the receiving yards are not there. The targets are nothing special. He's not a big touchdown guy to begin with. I don't know what to do with this guy right now because I really like him. I think he can consume and handle targets. I think he's good at a lot of things. I mean, he runs the ball. I think the way he gets open and you see his route running has been underrated, I feel like, in the past, but
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with Robert Woods. Do you have hope that things are going to swing up, or do you think it's going to be the same of he's just the B guy in this offense?
Yeah, it's funny because, well, you know this. Like, I don't like Goff. So, in all my dynasty leagues, I have no Rams players because I didn't want Goff. And then now that it flipped with Stafford, I still don't have any of these guys because I just never got on board. I just never drafted them. But I think it'll come back to the media a little bit. I think it's going to correct itself a little bit. I think Kupp's going to get. I think defenses are going to have to key on Kupp a little bit more, and I do think that Kupp's great, but there's games where consistency can be a question mark and health. So I do think Woods will get back in there. I think what scares me the most is not just Kupp. It's like Deshaun Jackson will have a 1 catch for a touchdown, and then you get Van Jefferson in there, and even Higbee, right? Like, so I think the offense in itself, I think is not as one-dimensional, even though they have really no rushing attack right now. I just think Woods has had a few bad games. So I'm more on the mindset that it'll kind of go back to the median. But I don't know if Woods is ever going to be that clear-cut alpha wide receiver 1 guy that we maybe thought he could be with Stafford. I think we're looking at a scenario where he's that 1A to 1B, and hopefully he has those good games. But he's a risk every time you start him right now. Like, let's make that clear. Like, you're going to have to make a decision this next week. Do I start Woods or do I start a safer floor guy? And I still think you go with Woods 1 more week, but I know I understand the risk. I understand not doing it too.
Yeah, the risk is there. And I mean, maybe you're looking at your matchup and you had a tough Thursday night outing against your opponent. And then, Woods, let's say, plays at 3:00 on a weekend. And now you're really juggling like, hey, do I go for safety or do I need to go for somebody that has a high ceiling that's more of a dart throw? I don't know. I feel like him as a player, he's shown us consistently through the last couple of years that he is a good player and he is a good fantasy asset. But if the usage doesn't shift a little bit, I'm going to be concerned plugging him in. I don't think, he's not we talked about drops. You'll never drop the guy. You're not going to sell him for a penny, but you might have to start kind of shifting around your lineup to fill your needs to win weeks now. So I'm hoping things swing up. I really am. The offense is too good for him to be a bust,
Yeah.
And I think maybe my expectations were a bit high. I probably had him somewhere between 12 and 15. I don't know, floating around there somewhere. I'd have to look, but ain't really looking like that right now. So on a positive note, yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to look at my preseason rankings, and nobody should. We got all these crazy guys all over the place between Cooper Kupp and Mike Williams and Patterson. You just go down the list of all these guys that are like surprising the world right now, but it is what it is. The funny thing is, I put this on the show sheet, Kevin, and it sounded like we had the same guy. I think you put a bad word in there in parentheses because I stole your guy. I stole your guy. But my question was originally, and we'll talk about it, who is a sleeper rest of the season for redraft? And it's important to talk about this sometimes because if you address it early on, then you don't have to rush to the waiver wire when this guy goes off and scores 20 fantasy points if he's a running back, a tight end, a wide receiver, whatever the case is. So kind of projecting a little bit more forward sometimes will save you that free agent acquisition budget or, the waiver order to fight and get guys off waivers. So I like to try to do that often. I try to have one spot where I'm taking a shot in the dark for redraft in advance instead of reacting to it. That's something that's a little bit of a strategy that's works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. For instance, early on, I saved guys like Tyrell Williams and Wayne Gallman, at the end of my bench just to see, hey, can I beat the waivers for these guys? Didn't work out, but in the past, it's worked out. So for this one guy, and he just came off of IR, is Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, 27th overall pick for the Baltimore Ravens in this past rookie class. A lot of people had him. I would say the majority of what I saw had him as the wide receiver 2 in the class. And people will juggle around and say, well, I had him as 3 or 4 or 1 or whatever the case is. I saw a lot of 2 for this rookie draft class. The unfortunate part about him, in August, he had the groin injury and he had to have surgery. But he's back at practice. He's out there running some routes today, actually. I saw clips of him doing some work. So it's not like he's just out there jogging in circles. He was doing some work. Good size and speed combination. They say he's got good hands. I think he offers something very different in comparison to both Sammy Watkins and Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's been dropping balls left and right. I think he might be another safety guy, man, for Lamar Jackson. I do. Mark Andrews, the last few years has been that he's open, feed Mark Andrews. I think Rashad Bateman can do a nice job of being that guy too. Hollywood Brown's more of a stretch the field kind of guy. He's a vertical threat. And I think Rashad Bateman, I think he can be effective all over the field. So when he's healthy, people will say, well, it's not a passing offense. It's the Ravens run first offense. There's been weeks that Hollywood Brown's been good, right? When he's not dropping balls. And I think Rashad Bateman's got a clear opportunity at hand once he's back healthy. I really do. And I'm excited for him. So right now, I promise, I don't know the roster percentage. Let me look it up. But on ESPN, I grabbed him in multiple leagues for free because not a lot of people in your home leagues are really talking about a guy who was hurt. But he's only rostered in 8.2% of ESPN leagues right now. So if you want to take a shot, you got that extra spot on your bench. I'm going with Rashad Bateman rest of the season for a sleeper. Kevin, give me your thoughts, because obviously this is a guy you thought about as well.
I wrote about him before the season started. And when you look at his profile, the nicest thing is, so he was my wide receiver 3 coming out, and the ability to create separation and get off the line against press coverage. Those are the 2 things I liked about him coming out of college. And similar to Justin Jefferson, he profiled very well. So he had 43.7% college dominator rating, which put him in the 88th percentile among all wide receivers. So he had a breakout age of 18.8. That means he's really good. 94th percentile among all wide receivers. And in 2019, he had 46 catches on passes thrown 10-plus yards downfield. So he has the ability to take the top off the defenses. And let's say his hands are much better than Marquise Brown, especially after last week. And he can do that. So I really think that we could see that we're going to shift to where you're going to have to compete with Andrews with those targets too. But Andrews has not had the year that we've expected to usually see from him. I think Brown will shift a little bit to being that big play guy now, just like we kind of mentioned. He have that 3 catches, whatever. But I think Bateman's going to be that outlet. I really do. I talked about it. In redraft and stuff, he's going as wide receiver 58 before the season. People like Russell Gage, Devontae Parker were getting drafted ahead of him. And I'm like, hey, what is he doing here? We got to take Bateman. And obviously Bateman got hurt, but I think he's back. I think that's a very good call on your part. And that's what I would say. Right now it's very scarce out there. Am I going to say Peyton Barber? No, hell no. So to me, it's Bateman, and maybe he can kind of elevate that. I would say I'd probably want Bateman more than Mooney right at this point. And those guys are getting drafted around the same time based on that offense. So if you can get Bateman and drop Mooney and do those things, I would do that.
And you brought up a good point about a guy like Peyton Barber. And I can't even think of the other guy that a lot of people have been talking about, but Bateman can be a rest of the year, very important starter for the team. And a lot of times what happens on the waiver wire is that we have these short-term guys that get plugged in. So Peyton Barber, Jacobs might be out another week. Okay, so you got one more week of Peyton Barber, which what does that do for the rest of the season for you? Or I just pulled it up here. This guy looked pretty good last week, but Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, if I'm saying that right, on the Tennessee Titans. He had 13.3 fantasy points last week. He scored a touchdown, 4 for 4 catches to targets. He's filling in because A.J. Brown is week to week, and now Julio might be banged up. These are very short-term pickups on the waiver wire. You just keep going down the list. Even Hubbard. When CMC is back, he's not going to be useful, in my opinion, for fantasy. But a guy like Rashad Bateman, you pick him up now, he might be useful for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
and it's not going to go away. He can be the wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 2 on this team, regardless of how often you say they throw the ball. So I think that's important. I think that's important for waivers sometimes, is like, how long is this going to be relevant to my fantasy team?
No, I think that's exactly 100% what you got to do. Like, and you got to look at that from the long term perspective, especially with the extra game. Injuries happen. And okay, I'd rather have that wide receiver. And I'm not betting money on Peyton Barber. I mean, Jacob's going to come back at some point. The other guy that you mentioned, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. But those guys, like, I'm not betting money on those guys. Give me the guys that I think are solid, that they drafted, they use high draft capital on. They're going to use them, unless you're the Giants and Tony. But everybody else uses their high draft capital pick.
You've had a couple Giants comments, Kevin. I'm
hate
thinking
the Giants.
you're not.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a big Giants guy. No, not a big Giants fan. Not Eagles either.
It's coming together. I'm like the Hangover gif with all the numbers coming across my face right now. But all right, as always, we'll shift into starts of the week. So Kevin and I go through starts of the week. We say, why we feel that this person will do better than expected. So sometimes it's a guy you might have been playing already. Sometimes it's a guy that might be on your bench, might be on the waiver wire. It just kind of depends. And we are typically higher than the consensus expectation on these guys for the coming week. And then on the next week, into the next week, we usually review it. So sometimes we hit it on the head, some great calls, and other times we don't. And that's just the beauty of fantasy football. I mean, it's all unpredictable. It's all predicted guessing. So QB start of the week, Kevin, who you got this week?
Yeah, so my QB start is Ryan Tannehill. And when you look at that Tannehill, he's playing against the Jets. I'll take whoever plays the Jets all day. Tannehill hasn't looked great this year. I think last week against Indy, he looked a little bit better. He had 3 touchdowns, but he did have 2 picks. I think they're going to lean on that rushing attack with Henry, a lot of play action. I think this is the week that we see maybe if A.J. Brown's playing. I haven't heard anything that he's not playing, but we'll see. I think he's going to be all right. Then you have Julio, who's looked okay. I do think they're going to get them more involved. So I'm okay with going on Tannehill here, leaning against him. I think he's a good streaming option for some guys out there streaming going against the Jets.
And you know what? A lot of people have said, I was reading some match previews to this, and they said, like, it's the Jets. It's the Jets. They might just run the ball most of the game, but they're not going to give, and I know Derrick Henry's probably good for like 45 attempts, but they're not going to give him 100 attempts in this game. So sometimes when you do actually pound the rock more, it means more efficiency for the passing game. So that actually might help if they do have a nice lead on the Jets, and it opens up things for a guy that pretty much has to get back on track. So I'm interested to see what's up with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. They both might play. They both might miss. I don't know, but I don't think that changes the fact that the matchup is good. They'll run the ball a lot, and I think it's a good game for Tannehill to get right in this one. So when
do we both start worrying about A.J. Brown, Nick? When is this happening? Are we worried yet? Are we getting there?
I'm trying to pull it up, but I thought the last thing I saw was week to week. But there's no. Oh yeah, there is a questionable.
No, just in general, because he has not had a good year all year. So like, are we worried about this? Like, are we worried about it? Because hamstring. Now he hasn't had a good game. Like, I mean, people were talking about wide receiver 1. I don't know what dumbass did that. That was me. So now I'm worried. Now I'm a little worried.
I feel like let's take health out of it. Let's just say he's completely healthy the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Am I worried? I don't think I'm necessarily worried, because I feel like if you bought into A.J. Brown, you didn't buy into, it's because he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. I don't think that's why you bought into, obviously it's Tannehill. I'm just trying to make the point of it's not the quarterback, but I don't think you bought into A.J. Brown because of that. I don't think you bought into him because it's a highly schemed passing offense. I think you bought into the talent of him and how he can just bust open a play when he's got the ball in his hands and just extend the field, or you can make plays happen from a short yardage gain. I mean, I'm not necessarily worried. I just feel like maybe certain expectations were higher than will be reality, but I'm not going to sell him for the low. Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. I'd be trying to buy him right now, maybe if somebody is, because again, the reason you thought he was going to do good, I don't think that changes. The only thing that will affect it, I think, is health. And should Tannehill be better? Should this offense be better? Sure. But you can say that about a lot of people. You can say that about Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's not having like the most phenomenal season right now because offense kind of looks like crap. Are you do you have major concerns for AJ Brown? Or are you feeling it differently?
I would say that I'm concerned about him with Julio for some reason being there. I think it's kind of messed up that chemistry that he had and the targets there. I think that definitely has hurt him a little bit because I know that AJ Brown was the real guy. It looks off. I don't know the knee thing too. He's had knee surgeries that we talked about. Like there's something concerning me a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm not that worried, but I do think that I did see someone say like if you have Cooper Kupp, you should try to trade Cooper Kupp for AJ Brown in Dynasty, which I don't know at this point. Like, if he's balling this much, like I think one thing as a community and one thing just as fantasy players, just because someone's playing well, you don't have to trade them. Like, you can just ride this thing out. Like, even Dynasty, I mean, they're not that old. So I'm just a little worried. I'm getting hesitant about that offense, what it looks like. I I am. I say out of 10 being the most worried, I'm about a 5. I'm in the middle. Like, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen with these? And hamstrings suck. You know that. You're an athlete, like, or a former athlete, right? Like, like that's hamstrings are terrible.
Hey, I got out there in a scrimmage today, and I played on the subs. I played on the second team, and I scored a goal. So that's all I got to say.
He's
so
back.
I'm still an athlete I don't know. We'll see about how I feel tomorrow morning. But yeah, good points. Good points. I'm hoping that if he's not playing this week, that it's not a long-term thing because it's going to really, really frustrate people. Hopefully he's back this week. I don't know. I don't know what the case is. I'll have to ask my injury expert Google on that. But my QB start of the week, and I don't like this division at all, but I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins, even though he's playing the Cleveland Browns that just ate up Justin Fields last week. But looking at Cousins, he's been very, very good. He's been very good in fantasy lately. 22 plus fantasy points and 2+ touchdowns in all 3 games. So it's not like he's had one really good game last week. All 3 games he's been solid. 4th in completion percentage and 4th in QB rating. Only 3 players in the league have more than his 8 touchdowns. Another stat I looked up too, which I liked, he's only been sacked 5 times. So when I look at what happened with Fields, obviously it's 2 different systems, 2 different O-lines, 2 different head coaches. But what I looked at with Fields is he was super unsuccessful, partially because he was getting hit all the time. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, has only been sacked 5 times. So 20 QBs in the league have been sacked more times than Kirk Cousins. And it could be due to the competition. We can attribute that to other factors. But when I look at the Cleveland defense, they're good at getting to the quarterback, and the Vikings have been pretty good about not letting that happen. So he's been on fire, and I feel like you just got to ride the hot hand. And he's a guy that you can pick up off of waivers. I think almost every week people have been putting him on the waiver wire list. And if you look at his roster percentage, he's still under 50% roster in ESPN. He's at 44.2%. I'm going with the hot hand. He's projected 17.8. He's been scoring 22 plus every game. I'm going with him this week. How are you feeling? Do you not like this matchup, or are you confident he's going to have another good game?
No, I think he's fine. I think this is a very safe play. Even at the matchup that he plays, like I think that you're looking. Cousins just wins leagues. He just that guy that you draft late, and you're just like, yeah, I can see 2 touchdowns, 300 yards, easy, and just where the game script's going to go. That the defense is good he's playing, but they're going to have to come from behind. So I like it. I think that he's a very safe play. I think he's a very solid quarterback.
Somebody in a league, and it's a weird league. It's a dynasty, but then it's a Russian roulette league. So every year one position gets killed off and put onto the waiver wire for rookie draft. Nice. So it's crazy. Nice. It's cool. So sometimes you got to play certain things as redraft. And some guy wanted me to pay Kirk Cousins plus something for Trevor Lawrence, and I had no interest just because one guy's been very good, the other guy has not been, and that position might be killed off anyways, after this season. So why even make this dynasty trade? So he's been good. He's been good. Running back wise, which could be tough because we've had a lot of weird weeks for running backs. I kind of want to pull up that list here before I get you. I should just have it right in front of me. I've been looking at it throughout the days. But if we look at the running backs right now, and I know most people predicted these standings, but Derrick Henry, number 1, about accurate. Aaron Jones, 2. DeAndre Swift, we gotta love that.
Wait, who? Who is that?
DeAndre Swift. Yeah, the guy that's on an offense that's never had a running back be good since Sanders back in the day, and they're going to be losing every game, so he can't be good. And He's going to get completely split and beat out by Jamal Williams. All these reasons why he's not good, but he's the running back 3 right now, and he's phenomenal. I saw somebody today say that he might be the dynasty RB1 if McCaffrey's out of the picture. And
wow,
hey,
shit. I feel like somebody was talking about that. I don't know who it was, but somebody was out here talking about that.
Damn. I mean, I'm not going to say anything else behind that. But we go down the list. We got a guy, Kareem Hunt. He's above Nick Chubb right now. Jamal Williams is at 10, who's in that same system. It's so interesting because there's a lot of other guys. I think Patterson's at 17. If I'm looking at things the correct way, it's not what we expected. Tony Pollard, RB 18. Melvin Gordon, RB 12. There's a lot of interesting standings right now for how the running back position has gone, and things will even out as we go down the road. But so it kind of makes it hard to predict things going forward. But what do you think for the running back position? Who's a player that stands out to you as a good start this week?
Okay, so everybody needs to hear me out here because I picked someone who I think based on last game of what he did against Dallas, which how the hell does Miles Sanders only have 2 attempts against the Dallas Cowboys? Like, I don't understand it. Like, that offense always frustrates me. I feel like Sanders is a lot better than what he gets credit for just because of the usage that he gets. Like, he had 4 targets, which is fine. The game script probably kind of screwed him anyway. But I think Miles Sanders against Kansas City is 1-2. Eckler had a pretty good game last week that you saw. I thought he did well. I think that they're going to use Sanders in a way that they didn't use him last week. And I think they're going to kind of be like, hey, you know what? We got to use Sanders. We got to use this usage and get him there. I can see him getting the targets. They're going to get him more involved. Guaranteed that he'll have 15 attempts. I believe that he's going to have 15 attempts. He's going to have the targets. So to me, the usage is going to be there. And they kind of went away from Gainwell as well. So like they didn't really use him. I could see Sanders getting that usage that we like to see.
I think that they're going to have to realize just like abandoning the run last game did not work. I mean, it wasn't in their favor. And he was productive with the touches he had. 5 touches, 55 yards. So that's pretty good. He had 15 carries. So Kevin's saying 15 carries is the mark he feels he's going to be at. He had that week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. In week 2, he had 13, but he had 14 total touches, so around that mark as well. So his first 2 games, he was right around that sort of volume. I think they kind of just lost the plot this last game. I think they lost what they were probably trying to get after in this game and try to improvise way too much by establishing an all-out passing game that didn't work out. So when things don't work out, you kind of have to switch up the game plan a little bit and maybe get back to what has made them successful early on, and that was having a little bit of both. So I think it's going to be a get-right week for him just because I think the volume is going to be much, much better because if you look at the score sheet as a coach after a game, this is for any sport, and you look at what you tried to do and it just didn't work out, then you have to adjust, and I think that's what they're going to have to do. My guy, I did want to throw out there, and I saw it on I wrote down notes, and then I saw it on Twitter, and then I quoted it on Twitter, but I think it might be a good get-right week for Jonathan Taylor against Miami just because the first 3 weeks, the Dolphins gave up 100 yards to Damian Harris. Then they had a combo of Singletary and Moss for over 100 yards, and then Peyton Barber that you talked about earlier tore up Miami. So I think Jonathan Taylor, this might be a get-right week for him. Not my pick, though. I went – and I feel uneasy about this, so maybe you're going to have to talk me out of it unless you agree too. But last game, he had more snaps, more touches, more targets than Devin Singletary. He scored 15.4 and 18.1 fantasy points weeks 2 and 3, which combined would be the RB10 across those 2 weeks. Small sample size, but Zach Moss is hot right now, and it sounds weird to say, but the Texans matchup seems like a good matchup that I know the Buffalo Bills will probably never just pound the rock when they have a big lead and only do that. But I think that if they have a comfortable lead, they'll be more at ease running the ball, more often than they typically do. But he's hot right now, and I feel like I want to ride the hot hand in the flex position for this guy. He's only projected, I think, like 10.6, but he's eclipsed that 2 weeks in a row and been pretty good. And he's scoring too. The offense is good, obviously, but against the Texans, I'm thinking that they might be in some nice scoring positions. So maybe that will equal red zone snaps for Moss, if that's the case, even though Josh Allen kind of snipes those a lot as is. But am I am I off with this one, or are you not sold? Maybe it's just a matchup for me. I don't know. What do you think about Moss?
No, I actually mentioned Moss recently. I'm starting him in a couple leagues. I think that the touchdown upside is there, and if he can get you like 18 carries, 70 yards and a touchdown, if he doesn't
Yeah.
get that much, maybe he gets 12 and 70 and a touchdown. They use him in the pass game a little bit. I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with him, especially with Singletary. Like, who are they going to use? Where are they going to go with? I do think if they get in the red zone, though, they're going to use Moss. And I think Allen will, they're going to lean on him a little bit. They haven't ran a lot with Allen. And I think that's one of the key things that we've seen. Allen hasn't really had that rushing upside that we like to see. I think it's partly because they don't want him to get hurt, but also they're going to use Moss in the red zone. And Moss is fine as a red zone back. Like, he was always got touted as being that next guy. He was never going to be that. But if he can score a touchdown for you, I think he's one of those dependent touchdown guys. But I like the matchup. Houston's not good.
Yeah, I think the matchup stands out, and I like the fact that has those, again, touches, targets, snaps more than Singletary last game, but that might swing back and forth. But again, I'm going to ride that matchup and ride the hot hand. Wide receiver position, deepest position in fantasy football. I'll start this one off, and he's a guy I've liked historically, but the rookie's been balling out on the Bengals here. But T. Higgins just got ruled out of this Thursday matchup. And I like Tyler Boyd as a flex.
Yes.
I'm not saying he's your wide receiver one. It's a flex. He's a flex, and I'm comfortable doing that. He led the team in targets with Higgins out versus Pittsburgh last week, and he scored a touchdown. 15 targets the last 2 games with Joe Burrow. That's a good sign, I think, for Tyler Boyd. And if you look at last year, he clicked instantly with this guy. And I always say, because the number 11 stands out, I think weeks 1 through 11, Tyler Boyd was wide receiver 11 before Joe Burrow got hurt. So he has a good connection with Joe Burrow. You're taking one of the 3 main guys out of the system. They don't use the tight end like crazy. Maybe Joe Mixon will get more targets. I don't know, but there's not going to be I think Mendy actually was commenting in the chat, which we could not see, but I think he was saying something about Auden Tate, and he had a dream about Auden Tate having a good game. I know Mendy has a lot of dreams about Auden Tate. But maybe this one's ironic. I don't know. But I think Tyler Boyd's a good play this week against the Jaguars. A good matchup. One of the best pass catchers on the team is out of the mix, and he's a good target hog for Joe Burrow when he needs him. So any thoughts before we shift into your guy about Tyler Boyd?
I love Tyler Boyd. You know that. Tyler Boyd's my guy. I think that he is going to have that. You saw what he did last week. I think with the usage that they're going to see, if Higgins is out, Chase and Boyd should be in every starting lineup. I don't see why not, especially with the game this Thursday. Like, I'm all on board. Tyler Boyd's always been underrated in my opinion. I think that he's a very solid wide receiver 3 option on every team that you have, especially in Dynasty. I think he's a very solid guy.
Yeah. Who's your guy for this week?
All right. Again, I'm diving into deep end with these 2 guys. My running back, wide receiver. Allen Robinson. All right. Let's talk, Allen.
Oh, man. You know what? Please, for the love of God, do something. It's like the picture of the guy with the stick poking something. Like, do something, which is not his fault entirely. But, yeah.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is at this point, you play in Detroit. They have one of the worst defenses in the league. That offenses just go up and down all day on this team. They have really no pass rush when you watch them play. I think they're going to have time. If they open up, they got to give Robinson the ball at some point. You got to give your guy the ball. I mean, and the 6 targets he had against Cleveland, we talked about already when we talked about Fields. It's just they weren't real legit targets. You look at the air yards, everything there, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I think that Robinson, this is his game. I think he breaks out. I think they win this game. They're back to 2-2. Fields looks good. Allen Robinson is there, and Allen Robinson will have a good game. 8 catches, 100 yards, touchdown. The old Allen Robinson that we love to see.
For the love of God, please. That's all I'm going to say, is because 9.5, 10.4, and 4.7 fantasy points, not good. The last 2 games combined, he's got 4 catches. So the only way I'm going to be hesitant about Robinson is if Matt Nagy said openly that I think Dalton's like in a boot or something. He's not even suiting up for anything, but he said it's going to be like an open competition this week, and we'll see who the quarterback's going to be. And he threw out the name Nick Foles in there too. So if they go crazy and start Foles, then maybe I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be Robinson's week. But I'm with you because I feel like, again, get right week after a bad loss, get right game. It's got to be Detroit. And I feel like they won't have to deal with a pass rush nearly, if not anywhere close to what they did last week. And he's talented. We know he's talented. He's dealt with terrible situations in the past and terrible quarterback play. So I think it's a good get right week for this guy. And I'm hoping so as a Bears fan because, man, Detroit doesn't look like a walk in the park. They've given some people some decent games this year. So hoping that's the case. We'll close things out here with the tight end, and I'll fly through mine. Again, sometimes you just have to go with what looks like a good connection and what's hot. And I know a lot of people don't like Mike Gesicki, but seeing he was targeted by Jacoby Brissett 12 times and he had 10 catches last game, I think Jacoby wants to pass the ball short, and Gesicki was that guy last game. So his ceiling might be limited with yardage, but this guy scored in 40% of his games last year. And if he's got that many targets with Jacoby, it seems like they got a good connection. He's going to be looking for him, so I'm going to ride with the hot hand there. When Tua's back, maybe I'm pivoting away and saying I'm not with Gesicki. So that's my quick take on him. Any Gesicki thoughts, and then give us your guy.
Yeah, that's probably the one I disagree with you on. I'm out on Gesicki. I've been kind of out on Gesicki this whole year. But I mean, like you said, I don't know what Jacoby Brissett is bad at football. How come teams can't get backup quarterbacks? Is it just that quarterbacks are that bad that they just can't get backups?
The Bills did. The Bills did.
The Bills, yeah, I know. Shit, Bills. Dolphins. You missed your window, Trubisky, baby.
Trubisky season. It could have been for the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's hard for me to start a Dolphin with Jacoby back there, but I can see. I mean, shoot, if he's gonna dump it down to anybody, probably him. But no, my guy is Noah Fant, and he obviously had a bad game last week. He only had 3 targets. They didn't really need him against the Jets. They kind of shut down that offense when they went up. They went up early. It was 26-0. But this week against Baltimore, Baltimore is known to give up some receiving points to tight ends, and you saw it with Hockenson. You've seen it. So I do think that obviously Hockenson had the game. He had the targets that were there the week before. You see it against Kelsey. So I think that Baltimore can give up the targets and the receiving yards to the tight ends. I think you have to start Fant. I think Fant's going to have a good game. And
he's had some nice targeted weeks the first 2 weeks, 8 and 6. Yeah, I mean that's pretty decent for the tight end position. I agree with you. I think what happened with the game last week, it wasn't really needed when you got 2 running backs that they keep using. Just continue to utilize those guys. A note I read earlier, and it goes right with what you said, but Baltimore has some issues in coverage at linebacker. And I like Patrick Queen a lot, but it doesn't mean that, a guy like him or whoever else is in the middle, they might be able to handle what's in front of them. But when they're actually taking account for the tight end position, then it opens things up. So I like Noah Fant. And KJ Hamler, ACL tear, another guy. I feel like there's been so many ACL tears this year. I don't know if has it been like this every year? I don't know. I feel like it's been unreal how many have happened this year. But KJ Hamler now out of the mix. So Judy's not back. And I mean, what are you looking at? I mean, Sutton's had some decent production lately, and Tim Patrick will get his. But I think Fant's got to be the second, maybe the first. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But most talented guy. I mean, first or second most talented guy on the team. So he's going to get some volume in a game that they're going to have to throw the ball against Baltimore. Like that call. All right. So we got 50, almost 8 minutes on the clock here. Good show as always. You can find Kevin at DuBois_22, me at P2W Fantasy, obviously on Twitter here. Thank you guys for listening and watching. Either live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever the case is. Really appreciate that. Kevin, what's coming up for you the rest of the week? I know you're always working on something, scheming up something behind the scenes over there. So what's coming up?
Yeah, I'm just I'm actually gonna take a couple of days off, I think, from content. You can catch me Friday morning. I always do a college football preview. I go through about 6 different guys that you can watch. I stream it on Twitter and the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel, and I go through a couple of games that I like. So that'll be Friday. But after that, I'm taking a few days off, spending with my family, the kids, and gonna take some time.
Good. As you should. I'll be live Sunday, but otherwise, I think I'm just going to chill out and just put out random stat tweets or something like that when I'm bored at work. But I got some soccer ahead of me, and I found out we have some family pictures on Saturday, which I was told that I was told multiple times, but I am now just putting 2 and 2 together. So got that going on. So maybe I won't be doing as much either. But
I had family pictures on Sunday, Nick. 1 hour. I was taking family pictures, smiling and just loving my life. That's how I'll say that.
Turned out good.
I mean, yeah, my wife was happy. I hate family pictures, and I hate how much money they cost because it hurts my soul. But it was good. Family was good, But it's just one of those. It's a daddy thing. It's a husband and daddy thing, right?
Yeah, like I feel like we'll appreciate it down the road, but like right now, I don't know, maybe not as much. But it'll be interesting with my daughter. She's one of two people. She's either like the sweetest, like happiest girl, or she's extremely mean right now.
Yes.
So we'll see how she is for pictures on Saturday. All right, we'll close things out here. Thank you guys again for watching, and good luck with your week 4 fantasy matchups. Have a good night.